Good morning, nerds. This is going to be my last 2023 wrap-up video. I've got my trusty computer here and my list of superlatives, and we're gonna go. Quick introduction. This is something that I do usually on my Goodreads every year. You know, my Goodreads link is in my bio. So if you want to check that out, I've done past, not every year, because sometimes I just get overwhelmed and I'm like, I don't want to think, I don't want to do things. So I haven't done every year, but this is something I like to do every year, where I go through and I don't talk about necessarily the best books that I've read. Some of them I maybe even didn't like that much, but the book has something sticky about it that sticks in my brain and that is notable to me. And I like to sort of pick that out of the crowd and then give it my own special name / award / superlative. So I'm just calling them superlatives, but there's no best book, best romance. You know, there's none of that in here. This is a little different. I've got about 28 books here to mention, so I'm not going to go into a lot of detail over any of them. I'm basically just going to say the category and then a couple of sentences. And if you're curious about why I did what I did, you can always go, look up the book. With all of that said, let's get into the books. I've got my tea. This, by the way, has my initial on it, A for Ashley. This is an Anthropology mug, and I never would have bought this for myself. It was a present. Anthropology is too expensive. Okay, I might periodically be reaching for that. First category. This is a category that I'm calling the same but different. And I think you'll understand why once you see the books. This is Yellowface by R.F. Kuang and the plot by Jean Korelitz. Not quite sure how to say that. I'm not the first person to point out the similarity in these two plots. I'm putting them together to illustrate not only how they're similar, but how they are different. So these are two books that are nominally about somebody stealing somebody else's story and publishing it, and then having a great deal of success and having to deal with the consequences of that. So that's the basic plot of both of these. But they are concerned with two very different things. Yellowface is about cultural appropriation, who gets to tell what kind of stories. It's also about writing in the way that the culture and the commerce of it all gets in the way of community and creativity. In the back, the author says, this is a horror story about loneliness and how lonely it can be to be an author. But it's also about racism and bigotry and self-denial. And it's more of a literary introspective sort of thriller-ish kind of read. And then the plot is a straight up thriller, but it's also very smart and thoughtful and well written. And it's mostly concerned with not who should be able to tell a story, but the actual act of creativity itself and where ideas come from and what it's like to be a writer and to create stories and put them out into the world. This was a more twisty, genuine plot kind of thriller than this was. Although they're both very satisfying reads, I gave both of them the same rating, 4.5 stars. I recommend both of these. Maybe if you didn't like Yellowface, if you wanted something more straightforward, this one would be okay for you. And then if you didn't like this one because it was too simple for you or too white, maybe try Yellowface. But yeah, both of these were great. Next up, this is called the Graded Endings Award, and I am bestowing that award to Brandon Sanderson for Defiant, which is the fourth and final book in the Skyward series, which is in his larger Cytoverse. There's going to be more series in this world, written mostly by other authors, not by him. And then The Lost Metal, which is the fourth and final book in the second era Mistborn, the Wax and Wane series. So both of these I gave 5 stars. Everybody knows you can be having the best time with a story, TV, movie, book, whatever. But if you come to the ending and the ending doesn't wrap it all up, if it doesn't give satisfying, not necessarily happy, but satisfying endings to the characters, if it doesn't close off its story arcs properly, the whole of what came before can be tainted. And not just to mention that you feel like you spent a lot of time on a story that didn't end well. If it ends fine, that's fine, but he's really good at ending great. And both of these I would consider really great endings. This one made me cry. So yeah, the Graded Endings Award. Thank you, Brandon. Next up, I have the most conspicuous use of an erect, golden, glowing penis award. if you haven't read the book, you're not going to know what I'm talking about. You're like, if you have read the book, you're going to immediately know what I'm talking about. And that's Hellbent. There's a lot of conflicting opinions about this book. I personally had a great time with it, although it has since fallen out of my memory a lot and sort of soured a bit. But I think that's more because I read this towards the first of the year. I think if I reread this, I would remember what I liked so much about it. But there's a scene in here. There's a thing, you know, like I said, and it was just like, what? Why? I don't think it was necessary. Very strange. Very strange addition, Ms. Lee Bardugo. Very strange. Could have done without it. Okay, so the next category that shall be bestowed is the most consistent author award. It seemed strange for me to give this award to this author, considering that I'd read a bunch of their books before this year, before 2023, and I finished out a prior series that I'd read all of. And I mean, it was consistently good, but maybe that's why I'm giving this award. Maybe because, but they surpassed, it's an author writing duo, they surpassed my expectations with the 2 series I read for them later in 2023. And that's Alana Andrews with the Innkeeper Chronicles and the Hidden Legacy series. So if this is an author you haven't checked out yet, they write paranormal / urban fantasy / fantasy romance set in alternate worlds. Other people love and swear by the Kate Daniels series, and there's also another series that I read by them that I'm blanking on the name of right now, and I enjoyed all of that. But as soon as I picked up this, I was like, yes, this is for me. And I picked this up and I was like, yes, this is for me. There's something about the world building of both of these series that just speaks to me. So this is actually the first book in the second trilogy of this world. I just sold my copy of Burn for Me because in preparation for this beauty coming out in 2024, sometime later this year, and I'm getting new copies. But for now, this is the one that I have that's the least offensive. This is set in an alternate world where magic was given to humans by way of a scientific experiment, like a serum sort of thing. And the consequences that had on Earth's history are played forward into the present day. And I'm not going to go into it because it's pretty complicated. But if you are a fantasy fan and you want something that's adventure-y, that's romantic, that's fun, that is just as pleasurable in terms of the secondary and tertiary characters as it is as the primary characters. In fact, not in this book. I liked the main character in this, the main couple in this book, but in the first book, the main love interest, Rogan, is not my fave. He's very alpha, and that's not my thing. But I had such a good time with those books anyway because all the rest of it was so fun. And then this book, this series is about a woman called Dina who's an innkeeper, and in this world innkeepers run inns, but it's not an inn like you're thinking. It's a magical inn, and it's a special thing that has special rules, and it's sort of like a sacred space of community, and an innkeeper has sacred charge of her guests. So this is half the reason I liked this is because I liked seeing Dina prepare and please her guests. And then the other half is the rest of the world building, and it's funny also. So the first book is Clean Sweep, and the second book, which I gave 5 stars, this is my first 5-star Alana Andrews book, is Sweep in Peace. So these books were a really, really good time, and I anticipate that I will read the rest of this series in 2024. Okay, next up. This is the creepiest Use of Flora award, and that goes to House of Hollow by Crystal Sutherland. This book was a total surprise. I read this as a part of my This Vlog Won't End Until I Read a 5-Star Book series. I'll link it below. Spoiler alert, this was the 5-star. Didn't expect it to be this one. And I totally enjoyed myself so much in this, largely because of the way that the horror elements and the nature was perverted and changed, was so creepy and delicious and atmospheric. I don't want to go, like I said, too much into the plot of all of these because I've got so many to talk about, but don't be turned off because this is marketed as YA. It doesn't really read like a YA, and it's so atmospheric and the characters are so good. I just had such a great time, and the horror elements felt pretty unique to me. This is probably the most straightforward category in this little superlative exercise that I'm doing, and that's Best Body Horror. And that award goes to Lakewood by Megan Giddings. If you guys have read this book, you know what I'm talking about. If you haven't read this book and you have any aversion to body horror whatsoever, don't read this. But particularly if you have a thing with teeth, There is a scene in here that will live in my nightmares for the rest of my life. In fact, I just reminded myself of it. I just now pictured it, and I need a drink. Hold on. It's still really hot, but it's fine because I need the refreshment. This is a book about medical horror, essentially. This young woman, the main character, whose name I've temporarily forgotten, Lena, she signs up to be experimented on by this company, and they give her a ridiculously good health insurance package, ridiculously good wage for all of this stuff that she's going through. But what she goes through is sickening. I mean, it's got lots of good social commentary, but in terms of just the horror elements, it is spine-tingling, full body shudder. So yeah, best body horror. Next up, this is called The Best Use of Cats. I don't think I really need to see much more, but you know, there's talking cats in here and their characters, so. This category is called I Liked a Ruth Ware Book. This is the Ruth Ware book. I have read 4 of her books now, and I've all given them 2.5 to 3 stars-ish. Like, and 3 stars is a rating that I give sometimes when I'm like, yeah, you know what I mean? Like, I didn't really like it, but it was fine, and I can't really say why I didn't like it super much. For the same reason I can't really say why I liked this one so much, but I really did. I really liked it a lot. I have the hard copy, but I ended up doing the audio so I could get through it faster, and that was a really good decision. I really liked the audio. So if this is a book you're interested in, the audio is a really good way to go. Just a really solid mystery. Next up is a category I'm calling Millennials Will Feel Seen, and the book is Grave Expectations by Alice Bell. This is a book that I read in spooky season, in Halloween. And I never talked about it because I never did my October wrap-up. And I did the audio on this. The audio is excellent as well. So this is a British book, and it is about a burnt-out millennial named Claire, and she's a medium. You know, she gets hired out for parties, for events, for private readings, to commune with the dead and do the thing. And like most mediums, she is a fake, but the secret of Claire is that she's not actually a fake. She can actually see ghosts. The problem is she can't make those ghosts appear at her will. So unless the person who's hired her just happens to have a ghost frittering around, she's going to be faking just like any other medium. The other thing with Claire is that the reason she can see ghosts is that when she was 17, her best friend, Sophie, was murdered. And Sophie stuck around and is a ghost. So this is a crime-solving duo of a ever-aging millennial and her permanently 17-year-old best friend, Sophie, the ghost, solving crimes. I think when I went into this, I thought that they would be solving Sophie's mystery, but they're not. So I think this is going to be a series, and Sophie's going to stick around for a while. If I had to guess, I would guess that the book series will eventually end when they do solve Sophie's murder. But for now, what ends up happening is they sort of collect a band of misfits. There's a found family vibe in here. There's a queer vibe in here. There's several queer characters in here. The way that Sophie is used to gather clues, and also the humor of people not believing that Sophie exists because they're like, you're a fraud, but she really can see ghosts. So it was so funny. It was like, I mean, there's a thing with a purple dildo in here that made me laugh out loud for like 5 minutes. It was just so good. I really highly recommend this if you like mysteries, but especially if you like clever, funny mysteries. I love a tea. We're halfway through, I think. This is a category that is called the runner-up meta mystery. And I'm calling it that because this is my runner-up meta mystery. This is the book that got kicked off my best 23 books of 2023 because of Everyone in My Family Has Killed Someone. It knocked this one out. This had the crown since October when I read it, and then it was booted. So, but I did want to take a minute to talk about it because I had a lot of fun with it, and it was this close to getting a 5-star. In fact, I would reread this, and I feel like if I reread it, I'm gonna give it 5 stars, but for now it's 4.5. So what this is it's a mystery book, obviously, but it's not really a mystery book. It's like, the best way I can describe it, and I said this in my Goodreads review, is murder heists. The premise here, it takes place in the 1950s, post-World War II. There are 3 main characters that we're following, and each one of them has been recruited to go to this academy where they learn to commit the perfect murder. And they're there specifically because of one murder. They're not learning how to be a murderer in general to murder everyone just for funsies. They are there to commit one perfect murder because it is according to this school, a justified murder. And there's all these rules at the beginning of the book that have to qualify somebody to be able to come in and have their murder be justified. And the one that I remember, there's others, is that the world has to be a better place because this person will be gone from it. The combination of the historical fiction elements with the weird as hell murder school and the weird lessons that they learn, and then the fact that we go from character to character. One of the characters, we read their journal, so we get their direct thoughts. The other two, we just follow. And then once they graduate, we get to see them employ their plan and commit their crime. And like, will they do it? Will they succeed? Is the tension here. And I just had a really great time with this. This is by Rupert Holmes, who many of you may know from the Pina Colada song. He wrote that and sang it. And now he's written a really great crime meta mystery book. If you haven't checked it out, I really would if I were you. And I'm gonna reread this. You know, it's on my shelf permanently. It's great. The next one I'm calling, this category is called The Thing in the Yard. And The Thing in the Yard is The Twisted Ones by T. Kingfisher, just because, you know how sometimes, maybe, I know there are a lot of you, I'm sure. I don't exactly know the numbers of population percentages who cannot picture things in their head. And I know there's a name for that, for people who can't picture things in their head. So when they're reading, I literally don't know how you read, because what happens to me when I read is if the words pull me in and I'm like in the story, my brain automatically just generates pictures. And a lot of the times if I'll reread, the weird thing is it will generate the same pictures, even though I forgot. And if it's been years between reads, like it will generate the same. It's so weird. Anyway, something my brain did while reading a very specific scene of this book is create this image of a thing that I can't tell you about because it's spoilers, that is simultaneously horrifying and funny, and I love it at the same time. Like, I just have it in my head and it's there. It's there forever. And for that reason, I had to give this book its very own category, because it's so rare that my brain will come up with something with that many conflicting feelings that is that vivid, that sticks around, like even past the point of reading the book. And that's what this book did for me. I know a lot of people like her other horror book, The Hollow Ones, which I also read this year. I prefer this one, actually. I don't know why. Maybe it's because of that thing. It's The Thing in the Yard. Okay, so the next one I only have digitally. I would like to get this full series. It's 4 books, but right now I have all of them on audio. So that's how I have them. And this is a book that I read as a replacement for another book that I DNF'd in October because I hated the audiobook. So I'm going to come back to it. It was Vampires of El Norte. Yeah, I was really excited to read that book. And then I started the audio and the narrator just annoyed the hell out of me. So I had to stop and went searching for another audiobook that I could read on the spur of the moment. And Blanch on the Lamb is what popped up. And this book was so good, you guys. Like, I can't get over how many people are not reading this book. I follow a lot of people who love thrillers, who love mysteries, who love crime books, and almost none of them have read this book, which apparently in the 90s was a pretty big deal, especially in the Black community, because the author Barbara Neely is Black, or was Black. She passed away, unfortunately, so she can't write any more Blanche books, which is very sad because I love Blanche. I've only been with her for 1 book and I already love her. This is a book that is about a woman named Blanche White, which her name means white, which I did not catch until she pointed it out herself in the book. She is a domestic worker, and the book opens with her sitting in court waiting to be sentenced because she passed a bad check. She passed a bad check, you know, for those of you, you know, Gen Zers who don't understand what that means. Back in the day, you could write a check even if you didn't have money in your bank account, you know, to get a good or a service or something, because you were basically writing a check on funds that would be there in the future very soon. And this is what Blanche did. But because her employers, employers did not pay her when they should have, because they're racist, she didn't have any money in her account and she passed a bad check. So people came after her and she's going to go to jail. Like, they're going to sentence her, I think it's either 60 to 90 days in jail. But because her life is so precarious and she's living paycheck to paycheck literally, and she's got 2 kids who are adopted. Her sister passed away and wanted her to take care of her kids. Her kids will get taken away by her mother. She'll lose her job. Like, her life would be in ruin just from 60 days in jail. So she goes to the bathroom and she realizes, hey, no one's watching me. And she just legs it. She legs it out of the courthouse. She doesn't get sentenced. She goes on the lam, hence the title. She hides at her job because she had previously called in, not sick, but she'd called in letting them know she couldn't make the job that was scheduled for her because of this court date that she'd been forced to go to. So nobody knows where she is. Her employer doesn't know that she's actually going to show up to this job, which nobody took. So she rides out to the country and she takes this job, and there's a murder. The best thing about Blanche is that she's a detective beforehand because she's really smart, but she's also really super nosy, and it's so great. Like, as a nosy person myself, I really connected with her. And she's also judgmental, and I'm kind of judgmental also. So I just really liked her, man. She just noses into everybody's business in this family. And so when there is a murder, she's already halfway there. This was such a great time. And it also had really good commentary on race and class in America. And I just can't recommend it highly enough. And I've talked a lot about it, but it deserves it. I will not talk about the rest of the books in as great detail. So next up, this is called the Most Agonizing Almost a 5 Award. And this is for 2 books that I really keenly feel the need to have just 1 or 2 things changed, because then it would be perfect. Because I just really loved just everything about these books except for like this one thing that ruined it. And I say ruined it, but I still love the books and I still gave them both 4.5-star ratings. But there's significant flaws in both of them that prevented me from actually giving them 5. It's not like a 4.5-star rating where you're like, oh, it almost reached the point of greatness, that kind of thing. It's like, it was great and then it biffed it at the end. Like, it just fell over. Those 2 books are Yours Truly by Abby Jimenez and A Study in Drowning by Ava Reed. This one I've talked before. I will link the video where I talked about it down below, which is my 5-star quarterly wrap up from the summer. But basically, these are the 2 most adorable humans I've ever read in a romance novel, and their banter and the plot and everything was so good. And then like 75% of the way through, maybe it was even sooner, there was just this heinous use of the miscommunication trope that brought the whole thing down, like single-handedly. It just didn't need to be there. The book was working with so many rich themes and character moments and characters that it could have gotten rid of that entirely, and the rest of it would have just expanded to fill that empty space, and this would have been a 5-star book. As is, it's a 4.5, 4, and it makes me really sad. And then A Study in Drowning by Ava Reed, same thing, impeccable atmosphere. I loved the characters. The writing is so smart. It's been a couple months since I read it, so I don't have it perfectly in my memory anymore, but I was just rolling along. And then the thing that kept this from being a 5 for me is that the solution to the thing that these 2 main characters were looking for never even crossed their minds. Not one time. They go so into depth. They look into all this stuff. They consider things. They have long, in-depth conversations about things, and they never once guess the obvious answer to the problem. And I knew like almost immediately. I was like, guys, what is happening? What are you doing? And they never guessed it. And it was so obvious. And I feel like the book thought it was a secret, but it wasn't a secret. And so I couldn't give it 5, even though the rest of it was perfect. Just brought it down. So very sad, but also I still love both of these. This is The Best Use of Symbolic Cannibalism, and that's Holly by Stephen King. So a lot of people, when I've seen reviews of this, have completely ignored the 2 things that I thought were great about it in favor of complaining about King being political or that it's set during COVID. And I'm like, how long have you guys been reading Stephen King? He always brings real world politics into it because politics affects the real world. Like, he always does that. That's just his style. So if you're going to buy a Stephen King book, if you're going to read a Stephen King book, just know that's going to happen. Like, stop reading them if it's going to upset you. Second of all, I get the COVID thing. Like, if you're just not wanting to read a book about COVID, this probably isn't for you. But it's definitely not the most notable thing about the book. Spoilers for like the first quarter of this book, because the blurb doesn't really say what's going on, but very quickly. There's these octogenarian professors who they're not quite retired. They're still professor emeritus at this college in this college town that Holly lives in. And it's Holly Gibney from his previous Bill Hodges trilogy, and then from The Outsider and If It Bleeds. I know there's a lot of people who don't like Holly. I love her. Don't understand people who don't. But that's also not the most notable thing about this book, although I really appreciated Holly finally getting her own story. These elderly octogenarians are up to no good. They, as previously hinted, are cannibals. And what they do is they kidnap, they abduct people who will not be missed. It's non-white people. It's POC people and queer people that they target. They eat them. But the reason they eat them, I'm spoilers here, but I need to talk about the spoilers in order to talk about why this is so good, is that if you're just looking for a surface level, like, good cannibal story, this will give it to you. Because the reason they eat people is because they want to remain young and heal their afflictions and cut back on the symptoms of aging. They don't want to die. They don't want to get old. They don't want to be in pain. Which, that's understandable, but when you value your own life and extending your own life past what you're due more than the sanctity of another person's right to exist, there is a problem. And that's where I think this book gets really good, in that the way that these two elderly people stand in for the full generation of people currently in our world who don't care about the future generations as long as they get their money, their quality of life, their values preserved. And the consequences. They will literally eat future generations to preserve their own. And I think that's great. I think this is why I love horror. And then there's also, not related to cannibalism, there's a writer in here, and the conversations that she has, she's a poet, with her protege are really, really great. And I love those sections as well. But yeah, this is the cannibalism award. Symbolic cannibalism. I mean, if you were hesitant on picking this one up because of aforementioned reasons, I still would, because I think that the pros of what's here vastly outweigh any negatives you would have with, like, the COVID stuff or his, like, political mentions. Okay, anyway, rant over. The next one, akin to the Symbolic Cannibalism Award, is Best Use of Symbolic Butthole Award. This is a literal symbol, and that's Breakfast of Champions. I'll never get over it. The asshole is on all of the spines of Kurt Vonnegut's books. And I didn't know what that was. I just thought it was an asterisk and that it was cute. No, it's an asshole. It's Kurt Vonnegut's asshole. Wait, I didn't mean that it was his. I mean that he made it. He made this. And it says this, here's a picture of an asshole. It's a whole thing in the book. Anyway, I just wanted to mention it because I love it. This is a cozy mystery that nobody is reading, but they should be. So if you like cozy mysteries, this is one that everybody is sleeping on. As I sit here, this book has, I can't remember how many ratings, but it is still criminally low, just as it was 7 months ago when I first read it. And that's The Alewives by Elizabeth R. Anderson. She has released the pre-order stuff for the next book. It's called Sleight of Hand, and I'm super excited about it. I've got it pre-ordered on Kindle. The paperback isn't available to pre-order, so I think what'll happen is that the Kindle, and then like a couple days later, this will be available to order paperback. But I've got the Kindle pre-ordered because I want to support her, because this is delightful. Anyways, what this is about, if you couldn't tell by the subject, which is murder, mystery, and fine ale, is a plague era cozy mystery about two widows and somebody who still is married and has like 14 children. Post Black Death, like very soon after the Black Death, passed through Colmar? Yeah, Colmar, because the series is called The Alewives of Colmar. And these three ladies decide that they are going to make money by brewing ale. There's a whole bunch of historical stuff that went into this that was just incredibly pleasing. And in addition to that, and ladies banding together and doing a thing in a time that didn't approve of them, there's a murder mystery, and they solved the mystery. And there was this black humor associated with this terrible time in history it was just appealing to me on every level. And I won't stop talking about this until at least 500 people have read it on Goodreads, okay? That's my goal, 500 people. And then at that point, the numbers should hopefully just, you know, take care of themselves. But we need to get this. You need to read this. If you like mysteries, and if you like cozy mysteries in particular, you're sleeping on this. Okay, so this is a category that I'm calling Best Professional Fanfiction, and I do want to quickly clarify that professional fanfiction is a term I have been using for years now, before this whole like pulling fanfiction to publish and, you know, read the serial numbers off thing started. For people who write in other people's worlds, professionally published by publishers. So like people who write in Star Wars worlds and Star Trek world and any other existing IP, somebody else comes in and plays around in it professionally. That is professional fanfic to me. And this is the case of one of my favorite authors who was a professional fanfic author in Star Wars, moving to Jane Austen. And that's Claudia Gray. And this is the late Mrs. Willoughby. I cannot remember the name of the series right now. Oh, Miss Tilney, Mr. Darcy and Miss Tilney. This takes place several years after the last of Austen's published books. And it does follow all of her characters. And they're all like meeting each other in various ways. And there's always a death. So the first one is the death of Mr. Wickham, who is the turd burger from Pride and Prejudice. And he dies. And there's a murder mystery in an abbey. And then this one is following the death of Mr. Willoughby's wife from Sense and Sensibility. Henry Tilney's daughter, Juliet, next generation kind of a thing here. And Miss Elizabeth and Mr. Darcy's kid, Jonathan, met in the first book and solved that mystery. And then they meet again here and solve this mystery. And it's just so much fun. And what's great about it is that Claudia Gray clearly knows these characters backwards and forwards. And you do have to suspend some disbelief just because it's got like Jessica Fletcher syndrome where like people just keep dropping dead in front of these characters. And at a certain point, it's just going to become ridiculous. But I'm totally willing to suspend my disbelief about that because of the love that she clearly has for these characters and the way that she keeps them the same. Like they're still recognizably the same characters, even if they've grown over the years that we haven't been seeing them. Really, really loved this. I'm not going to go too much into this one because I didn't pull the quotes from it that I wanted to. And plus, this video is getting pretty long. So we're just going to pop the title up and then say a quick few sentences. So this is the Best Use of a Roomba since DJ Roomba Award.
Call him DJ Roomba. Little guy cruises around and plays music. What's hot, DJ Roomba? DJ Roomba! Tearing it up!
And that's In the Lives of Puppets by TJ Klune. The Roomba in here has been turned into a sentient robot called Rambo. And I know that Rambo didn't go over super well with a lot of people, but maybe TJ Klune and I just have the same juvenile sense of humor. And Rambo and his Nurse Ratched buddy, just every time they were on page and talking to each other, I felt it did exactly what TJ Klune wanted it to do to me. Like, we're on the same wavelength. I just thought it was hilarious. That's it. This is called The Award for Making Ashley Finally Understand the French Revolution. And that's A Declaration of the Rights of Magicians by H.G. Perry. This was a 4-star book, but I had a good time with it. And it, seriously, like, the title of this award speaks for itself. Like, I've learned about the French Revolution so many times, and it never stuck in my head. Like, I was like, wait, who are these people? What's going on? Like, everything always swum together, and I never understood what was happening or why things were happening, and I just, for whatever reason, had a mental block about it. But because of the way this was structured, where characters were experiencing things, like, I just got it all of a sudden. I was like, oh my God, I understand the French Revolution. Plus, it's also a really good fantasy book, and you should check it out. This is another one that I was going to try and quote for you guys, but I didn't have time, and also I'm running out of time on this video. It is called Best Non-Human Narrators, and it goes to Stoneblind by Natalie Haynes. A really great Greek retelling amidst a sea of mediocre to bad Greek retellings being published right now. So if you are looking for another one that is good quality and that has actual things to say rather than just retelling the same stories over and over with no new anything added, you should pick this one up. The reason this gets the Best Non-Human Narrator Award, she does like a handful of, I mean, the narrator mainly is Medusa. Then every once in a while she'll go and like switch over to non-human narrators. And my favorite one was there's a chapter entirely narrated by crows. But if I'm remembering correctly, there was also a chapter narrated by olive trees, I think. And then there was like a couple more that I can't remember at the moment. But this book was like sly and funny. And the audiobook, if you're gonna read it and you like audiobooks, do the audio because it's narrated by the author herself and she's a comedian and her timing is impeccable. She's so funny. She knows like when to get angry and when to be short, and just like her comic timing really enhanced the story for me. So yeah, best, non-human narrator award. I mean, technically Medusa is also not human. She's a Gorgon, so. This is called the Most Inspirational Fashion Award. This is a really stupid category, but I don't know, this is what I remember from this book. I'm gonna read it again, and I'm sure this will not be the most memorable thing to me, or maybe it will, after I read it again, but this is Tress of the Emerald Sea. The inspiration here is Hoyd, the narrator, and if you see, he's wearing socks and sandals. And when I saw this early in the year, in January of last year, I laughed so hard. That's not the end of this story. Before reading this book, I never once wore socks with sandals, not once in my entire life. And now, I do it all the time. In fact, I have to go get groceries. And I'm wearing these out of the house because I don't want to wear real shoes and I don't want to take my socks off. So, thank you, Hoyd. This is an award I'm calling Biggest Contact Vibes. So, Contact being either the Carl Sagan book or the Jodie Foster, Matthew McConaughey 1997 film. And the award goes to Singer Distance by Ethan Chatanier, I think it's Chatanier, something like that. This is a book no one is reading, but I had a really good time with it. I mean, it's not gonna blow your mind, but if you're looking for some like historical fiction, crunchy hippies, contacting aliens kind of stuff, like in Contact, where the focus is more on the science and the throwing your perspective on what first contact could look like, rather than just an alien coming and beaming themselves down, this is the book for you. So it starts because this is an alternate history world where symbols and math problems start appearing etched into the surface of Mars. And in the late 1800s, the first person to look at Mars with a telescope finds them there and solves the problem and relays it back to Mars. And then it goes back and forth and back and forth. And then the main characters of this book are some graduate students, I think in the 70s, who solve the latest equation that has been plaguing humanity for years and years and years and decades. And then they become famous for doing that. I don't know. I just really had a good time with this, and I think more people should read it. Don't want to go too much into this one because I don't want to spoil what exactly about it is keying into this whole category thing. But I am calling this award the award for the actually satisfying ambiguous ending. That award goes to The Pallbearers Club by Paul Tremblay. I know that people have tons of varying opinions on ambiguous endings and what makes a good ambiguous ending. And there's people that just hate ambiguous endings to begin with, like flat out. But I think this is the most successful one, definitely that I read all year. But maybe even in the last several years, because it was just so well done. And I can't spoil it for you. This is a book that has got terrible ratings, but I really love it. I'm sad that other people don't. Maybe it's just being read by the wrong people. This is a horror book that is being read by people who want kills and they want the gore, and that's not what this is. This is a meta sort of book where the horror is in your mind or in your perception, and it's about a friendship where the man thinks that his best friend is a vampire, some sort of a folkloric vampire, and the whole book is told in manuscript form, and the best friend, who he thinks is a vampire, has annotated the manuscript, so you get the story from both of their points of view, and at the end you have to decide who you think is right. And I just think it was very, very well done. Oh my god, you guys, I'm very hot right now. I'm overheating because I'm getting excited. Oh, okay, here's one for you. Let me just take a quick drink because I'm losing my voice. This is my other one that I don't have a physical copy of, and that is the Audio Narrator Makes It Better Award. And this award goes to one of the best-selling books of the year, The Woman in Me by Britney Spears. She obviously had help writing this with a ghostwriter. And I think if I would have read this book in a physical copy, I wouldn't have had as great of a time as I did, hence the name of the award. It's competently written, but the thing that elevated this book a full star for me, I ended up giving it 4 stars, was Michelle Williams' performance as the narrator. I mean, I understand why Britney didn't narrate it herself, and actually I prefer that she didn't, because that would have been too much. Michelle Williams just like channels the hell out of Britney Spears. I knew going in that it was Michelle Williams. First of all, 3 things. The emotion that she evokes while reading elevates the material. She makes it sound very human, and she brings a quality to the writing that is not there, I do not think, in the writing alone. Second, at times I forgot that it wasn't Britney talking. Even though they don't really have similar voices, the quality of her voice while she was reading, she's clearly a very gifted, I don't want to say mimic, but she gets Britney. She gets the heart of her. Like, I literally would forget multiple times while listening that it was not Britney reading the book, even though I knew it was not Britney. And thirdly, the thing that everyone's talking about is that she's funny. The scenes where she mimics like actual real life people that everyone's been talking about, I laughed out loud. And I rewound and listened again multiple times. I just had a really great time with this. Like, everything about it was successful. I mean, if she would have chosen to go a little bit deeper, I probably would have given this a 5. But as is, she went as deep as she could without hurting herself or exposing herself publicly. Her private self is very important to her. But the reason she wanted to tell this story is that she's kept quiet all these years and she's been pushed down and reinterpreted and been an object of the public in such a way that she needed to set the record straight and reorient the conversation around her whole thing. Specifically the conservatorship that her father had her in. That man should go to prison. If you're gonna do the book and you like audio, you need to do the audiobook. It elevates the entire thing. 4 more. Oh, there's another digital one. This is going to be called the This Should Have Been a Full Book Award, and that goes to Ankle Snatcher by Grady Hendrix. This is an Amazon short in a collection by other horror authors. This was the standout by far in the collection for me, and it's about what if the thing that lives under your bed is real? And it was just a delight. It was a delight. But I'm not the only person who ended this story saying that's it. You need to make this a full book, because the way the story ends, just you could absolutely see it going forward with certain people in a certain place taking on this ankle snatcher. And I just know that it would be great. And I really hope he expands it to a full book, but I don't think he will, but I really want him to. Anyway, you guys should all go check this out because it's really short. It's like 60 pages long, an hour listen on audiobook. And I had a great time with it. It was one of my favorite horror things I read this year. This is the Weirdest Found Family Award. And that goes If Found, Return to Hell by MX Liu. So they actually had 2 debuts this year, a debut novella and a debut, which I have not read the book yet, but it's The Death I Gave Him, which is a queer Hamlet retelling set in the future. This book, though, don't let the cover fool you. This is not horror. It's actually a found family cozy fantasy book. And I don't think it's reaching the audience that would like it. So here we go, audience who would like this. This is a cozy fantasy found family book. You should read it. So the premise here is that there's a main character, and the book is told in second person. So if you can't do that, just know that going in. But the main character works at this soulless corporate entity where he has to troubleshoot other people's magic. And he hates his job. And that whole thing was great. But somehow he gets called to take care of a possession situation for a college student. And so he goes in and he's like gonna help this poor kid who's been possessed by a demon, except it turns out that he's not being possessed by a demon. He is willingly hosting the demon, and the demon is the Prince of Hell, and the demon who is the Prince of Hell is an adorable, small, cute munchkin of a demon, and everybody wants to take care of him and love him. And that's what ends up happening. So spoilers for all of that, but It was so good. And anyone who loves cozy fantasy should read this. So second to last award goes to Most Consequential Book Review. And that's The Last Word by Taylor Adams. So this turned out to be a lot more than its initial premise would say. I mean, it goes places beyond that initial premise, but that initial premise is still so it tickles me still. And that's that the main character of this book, whose name is Emma, is house sitting because she's in a very dark place in her life. She's house sitting in a remote area, and so all she's got to entertain her are Kindle books. And a lot of the times they're not great. And so she downloads this Kindle book, reads it. It's nothing to her basically, but she gives it a really bad 1-star review on Amazon. And the author finds her and starts stalking her. And she's all alone in this house. And there's a dog. But that's, like I said, that's just where it starts. But the initial premise was so good. I mean, it's so cheeky. Particularly, he knew that people would be reading this who write reviews, who write 1-star reviews. And that this book itself would probably get a 1-star review or two. So I don't know. It's just very meta, and I liked it a lot. And also the book was great. Okay, and then my last one is a book I don't own yet because I hate the US cover and I want a UK copy. So I have to wait to buy it until I'm allowed to buy books again. By the way, my book buying ban video should be coming in a couple of days. And this is the Good News, Everyone.
Good news, everyone.
You Were All Right 10 Years Ago award. And that's Eleanor Oliphant is completely fine. So my Goodreads friend Paula roped me into an impromptu buddy read of this, and it was a reread for her because it's one of her favorite books, but it was a first time read for me. And I did the audiobook, which was great. And I love this, just like everybody else did when it was first published. I'm late to the party, but it's still a good party. It's still worth it. This book reminded me in a lot of ways of a book, my number one book of last year, which was Liar, Dreamer, Thief. Mentally unstable, neurodivergent young female protagonists are apparently something I really love. And then one of my first 5-star reads of this year, Emily Austen, also queer, neurodivergent, unstable protagonist in Everyone in This Room Will Someday Be Dead, also did the audiobook. Great. But specifically, Eleanor Oliphant is completely fine, is definitely worth your time, and I should have read it years ago. So that is the end of this video. Hold on, I'm losing my voice. Those are my superlatives for the year of 2024, and that brings to a close my end of year wrap-up content. And now we shall move forward into 2024 with reading vlogs and lists and whoever knows what else is coming down the road in 2024. Thank you for dropping by. If you made it to the end of this very long video, please leave me a house or a fire or a house on fire emoji for Eleanor Oliphant. If you've read it, you know what that means. I mean, it's pretty self-obvious. There's a house and it's on fire. Leave me that in the comments if you don't feel like commenting. Otherwise, tell me if you've read any of these books. Maybe leave me a few of your own superlatives, creative superlatives in the comments. I would love to read them. I love this sort of thing, clearly, because I spent all this time making these and then doing this. If you like this video, please leave me a like and subscribe if you want to for more content like this in the future. I hope you all have a lovely rest of your weekend. Farewell.